Hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Mailyn Salabarria, a communism survivor, a defender of capitalism, a mama, a nomad entrepreneur, and a public speaker. As she states, she was born in Cuba, but made in the USA. Well, Mailyn, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity of once again getting blue in my face about warning what is happening around us in Colorado.
Well, Maylene, you've been part of the Colorado Liberty community for a long time. And, like you said, when I reached out to you, I couldn't help but laugh to say that you've been getting blue in the face, warning Colorado about the dangers of socialism for the past 20 years. And I'm thankful that you've been a tireless advocate for liberty for so long. But I'm wondering if you think things have changed over these past 20 years. Do you think more people are waking up to the dangers of big government?
Um, I don't know how to put it in numbers or percentages, but I look at it the way this philosophical way of looking at life problems, which is that the worse the situation gets. I believe there was a Chinese philosopher that had a quote or something like that. Or the worse things get is when you know the more desperate you are, the more hopeless you feel, is when you know the solution is getting the closest. Because you reach a point, like the way that I compare it to Cuba, you reach a point where you reach such a rock bottom that there is really nothing words below that point, and everything that comes after have to be by default a step into an improvement, a step into something better. And I think that when I look at Colorado, it's probably very similar to that situation. If someone would have told me back in 2004 when I landed in Greeley in the middle of the huge Thanksgiving snowstorm that we have that year, coming from Miami of all places, that I was going to see Colorado the way that I see it today, I would have told you that you were crazy. I would have told you that you were totally insane, that was never going to happen. So yes, it's been very frustrating and very heartbreaking to see how a state that the irony, it's the birthplace of the libertarian movement, has sunk into a textbook definition of socialism, collectivism, and government control, with the only difference that we have it in English and with Wi-Fi. But when you look at the foundation of the problems that we have in the state today, it's really not different from what I escaped from Cuba 24 years ago. So in
Wow.
that sense, yes, it is very hard to witness for someone like me to witness something like that. Regarding statistics, opening the eyes or not, again, I don't have numbers. I'm not sure. What I do know is that for 20 years, Coloradans have become lazy and have fell asleep in the wheel. We have been the proverbial frogs in the boiling water, Brandon, when you think about it. I mean, the Gang of Four and the blueprint for Colorado was literally laid out in front of our eyes, and we kept leaning back in our hot tubs, happy little frogs, with the drinks, with the colorful umbrella, thinking, oh, that's never going to happen here. We have the First Amendment, and we have guns and this and that. And that Gang of Four was back there cranking up the temperature of the water without us not only realizing at this point, I think, is that we were refusing to see what was happening right in front of our eyes. Now, on the other hand of that question is that my hope, that, the optimism in me is that I see more younger Americans in general having like a wake up type of moment in their life, seeing that we're reaching a turning point where the whole theory of the pendulum is going to come back and it's going to slap a lot of people in their faces. And mark my words, they're not going to like it. And they're not going to have anybody else to blame but themselves. That's what I see that has happened in Colorado in the last 20 years.
Wow. Well, yeah, I really appreciate your insight. And I think, it's so true about hitting the rock bottom. It's like when there's nowhere else to go, You have to go the other direction in a way. The pendulum can only go so far. And I do think, I'm an optimist myself, and I see kind of the power of social media to expose so much of what the government has done, the failures of our socialist type of system, and all the problems down in Denver, the homelessness, the crime, the drug use, and people are, I think, getting fed up with it, and people are getting tired of it. And then they see the politicians, because for so long, I think these politicians in Colorado have been able to operate kind of in the dark. They've been able to
Mhm.
do things. The media doesn't really challenge them or question them. They're very compliant. The people, like you said, are not paying attention. They're busy enjoying our beautiful mountains and our wonderful lifestyle here, and failing to be those guardians for our liberty. But now, with social media, with the power of the internet, we can expose a lot of what they're doing, I think. At least that's my hope. I mean, do you see some value there in terms of, this podcast
Absolutely.
generation? Yeah.
Yes, I think it's not. I mean, it's like a perfect storm in a way to see it, to start seeing like a ground up response to change what needs to be changed. I mean, we already beat ourselves for neglecting our duties as citizenships of this state. It took 20 years. It took to see the economy destroyed, the legislature turned into a circus, the city of Denver and other places being like sanctuary cities, homelessness, drug use, you name it. Schools are literally the same indoctrination mills that I went through when I went to school in Cuba. Look at how many bad, horrible things had to happen for people in Colorado to open their eyes. So yes, it reached that kind of like critical mass point, if you would say it, where we have realized that we have to do something, that we have to fight back, that we have to do something, unless we are willing and have the resources to vote with our feet, which many people have done. And guess what? We cannot blame them, Brandon. We can't. We, as a small government, defenders of capitalism, free individuals, need to understand that pursuit of selfishness for people who have decided to vote with their feet is actually the individual freedom platform that we defend. So we need to keep that in mind. For the ones that have, for whatever reason, circumstances in life have to stay and have decided to fight back, yes, technology and social media could be the great equalizer. I mean, if you think about it, it has been the great equalizers in completely totalitarian regimes like in Cuba, like happened with the July 11, 2021 riot. So, of course, it's going to make a difference here in Colorado. But it's also going to take a lot of people to finally say to themselves, I am done with this and I need to do something about it if I want this place to be the home when I'm going to continue my business or raise my family or basically keep myself in this community. I think that without beating the beating horse, but yes, I have to beat the dead horse, because like I told you before we started recording, I have been getting blue in my face warning about this in Colorado. I just end up being like, oh, the crazy Cuban, or you are too incendiary, or you are too politically incorrect, and this and that. And I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, I was censored by a communist dictatorship for 27 years of my life. If you think that I am going to shut up now and I am not going to double down into calling out the garbage that is happening around us in this state, you're like completely wrong. So it is, again, it is a critical point that, as bad as it sounds when I am explaining it to you or when I'm talking to people, it also gives me hope because of that. Because people have finally realized that Colorado is now even worse than California. I mean, believe it or not, sometimes I hear what is happening at the state capitol in Denver or what Jared Polis is doing with the state. And I hear at Newsom in California, and I'm like, I'll be crazy if somebody, or even myself, if I would have thought that I was going to say, oh my God, Newsom is actually sounding like a mother right now. And don't get me wrong, I'm not supporting the guy. I don't like him. I think he's another rich, closeted commie, socialist toy that wants one life for himself and another one for us, the peasants. But I mean, this is just like a picture to illustrate how bad Colorado has turned. I know in conversations in our group of people, a lot of people tend to say, well, it's all the Californians that came here and, they ruined the state and this and that. Yes, it is true. But I'm going to tell you more. It takes two to tango. They ruined the state because we were the enablers that neglected what we were supposed to be doing. And that's why the Gang of Four and all that socialist crowd, big government group of people that came to Colorado end up achieving the goals that they wanted, which, by the way, they told us right away. I mean, they never conceal it. So it's like one of those premises that when the radical progressive left in this country, or anywhere in the world for that matter, tells you who they are, trust me, you need to believe them. You need to believe them.
Wow, well said. Yes. And Maylene, I can't help but think too, like you said, maybe some Coloradans in the past didn't believe it, right? You said crazy, being a crazy Cuban, really sounding the alarm and being incendiary and bringing this up. Maybe in the past, people just didn't want to accept it. They didn't want to believe that things could get so bad, and they didn't really understand what that meant. But I'm thinking now, all these years later, people are seeing it. People, they didn't heed your warning then, but now they're seeing it all come true. So, you don't sound at all incendiary. You don't sound extreme. You don't sound anything. You're just describing where we're at. And I think that's changed. That has changed, where there's this awakening, and you said with young people and old people alike out there who are kind of realizing, wow, yeah, they came in, they took power, and they're bringing us down. And I think that also gives me a little bit of hope, because people are getting.
Of course, yeah. Mm-hmm. It is the first step. I think, and just to paraphrase, this was an interview that I watched of Javier Milei with a Spanish political commentator on a Spanish TV outlet station. I believe it was in Peru or Florida. I'm not sure. And he was describing something that I'm going to try to do my best to paraphrase, but I think is a critical point where most of us are in Colorado nowadays. It's like, 20 years ago, I understand when we were having these conversations, most people were in this mindset that, the Cold War is over. Communism was defeated when the Berlin Wall fell. This is the land of the free. We have the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, this and that. And that kind of like, progression into that good generation of free, good, productive life tend to make human beings kind of like sit back and neglect and be a little bit lazy and this and that. Milei was saying in that interview something that is really important. And trust me, I think this is the point that Colorado have, turned finally at this moment. And is that we need to have the self-awareness to recognize that the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War ended, but we lost the battle against cultural Marxism. The progressive radical left, after all that happened, they switched the strategy completely, and they went into this cultural Marxism crusade because they realized, to their credit, way sooner than we did, that politics are downstream from culture. They took the culture over, and we were so safe and so secure in our Bill of Rights and in our Constitution and this and that we never thought that they were going to be able to accomplish that. Sadly, that's what the communism and the collectivism and the progressive left mindset does. They move slow with long-term goals, and that's the point where we are now. What is going to give me hope to Colorado is that we finally realize that it's like when you have, an addiction or a problem, the first step into recovery is to know or to acknowledge or having the self-awareness that you have a problem. So I think that's where Colorado is right now. It's like we, as sad and lamentable and terrible for the state has been, we are in the point where we finally open our eyes and we said, oh crap, we are in deep trouble. They won, in the arena of putting cultural Marxism all around us. And I finally realized that this is a problem. Is it going to be an easy battle or an easy solution? Of course not. It's probably going to take us a couple of decades to bring the state back to what it was before. That's the sad part of undoing generations of brainwashing into, oh, big government is going to be my Lord and Savior. Big government is the one that gives me my rights. Cronies and big companies go to bed with corrupt politicians, and that's why the small businesses and private property is a disaster and is being attacked upon basically every single day. I mean, look at what we have in Colorado. We have a legislature, like I said before, it's a freaking clown show. We have a judicial system that is frankly compromised. When you are reading on the news or listening to testimonies where family courts are colluding with other part of the judicial system simply to crush the opposition, where the lobbyists and the big corporations are the ones calling the shots. I always tell, especially young people, do not confuse free market capitalism with that we're seeing in Colorado, because it is not the same. So again, it is a hard picture to look at. It's a heartbreaking picture to look at, but at the same time, it gives me the hope that we have reached that point, that 0 point, where we finally acknowledge that we have a problem. And the next step by default is obviously going to be going into the proactive mode to start finding solutions.
Yes, definitely. I'm really hopeful that that's going to be the case here. And you mentioned our state legislature, and it's almost hard to believe, but we actually have like card-carrying Democratic Socialist of America legislators. Like they're literally the Denver DSA is this far left organization that has actually elected people to our state government, and they're passing policy that infringes on parental rights, our Second Amendment rights, of course. Is it trying to attack our taxpayers' Bill of Rights? I mean, what do you think about these DSA legislators, Mailyn? Do you think do they understand just how evil and how bad these policies can be? Like, do they understand the consequences of what socialism actually means? I mean, you lived
You
it,
mean
you
the
experienced it.
legislators? You mean
Yeah.
the legislators or the voters? Oh, the legislators absolutely know what they're doing, Brandon. This has been their plan since day one. I mean, they might have been wearing, the little lamb outfit for 10 years before they decided to run, but they know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly where they want to get. It's been up to us, the voters and the citizens, the ones that need to finally realize that it's like you cannot negotiate with them. You cannot. I mean, I'm going back to quoting Millet and Los Sudos. You cannot give them one finger because they will literally take your entire head off. That's what communists do, and that's exactly what has happened in Colorado. I mean, from all the things of the world, having like you say, card-carrying socialists elected to office, having teachers unions in their yearly conferences putting out resolutions that socialism and Che Guevara are the eighth wonder of the world and that capitalism is bad, this and that. And then sadly, they're so entrenched into the government controlled schools, because I refuse to call them public schools. They're so entrenched into it that now that's one of the reasons why I was saying earlier that it's going to take us a lot of years to undo this, because that's all the brainwashing that they have put in the younger generations of all of our kids that have been attending these schools in the state. So it is, I don't know, for someone like me, when I see those news and when I see that, I'm just like, literally thinking like, Aunt M, please wake me up and tell me that I'm not back in Cuba, because this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But again, that's what happened when we fall asleep in the wheel. And sadly, we have no one else to blame but ourselves.
So if the legislators know what they're doing and they know how authoritarian the end game is for their policies, what about the voters then? To kind of get back to that, do the voters understand just how horrible life can be under communism? I mean, you lived it, your family experienced
Yeah.
what it's like, and I really do believe most people, like you said, we're so comfortable in our lives that these average just Coloradans who are just going about their lives, watching the football game and going shopping, they don't understand just how horrible. I mean, what's the message to them out there of how bad can it get?
The message to them is like, and I do understand, I do understand that, I mean, whoever has been born and raised in the United States, it's impossible for them to compute in their heads what life under total government control really looks like. And like you said, for someone born and raised here, it's such a faraway picture that, oh, it's not going to happen here. The warning is that you cannot even give it one finger, because if you do, like happened in Colorado, by the time you open your eyes, it's going to be too late. It's going to look at what is happening in New York. You have another avowed socialist running for mayor, wanting to have government controlled grocery stores. It's like nowadays, we have a library. Everybody has a library in our hands, right? We do have this. You only need to Google, or even better, Grok, images of the government controlled grocery stores in Cuba. Go and look at that. Go and see if you can survive on that, and then come back and we can resume this conversation. And again, I don't blame it on the average American person living in Colorado not being able to compute in their head how bad is it. But you have tons of people in this country like me that are communist survivors that have made a career and our life mission of sharing our testimonies, sharing our life, giving the warning signs. You have books, you have history. Again, there is nothing new under the sun. When human beings don't learn from their past history, they're doomed to repeat it. And when they repeat it and they realize how bad it gets, look at Cuba. It's been 66 years and we still haven't been able to get rid of the communist dictatorship. So my question to Coloradans is, do you really need to wait to live 66 years under government absolute control of your life to be able to start, or to get the drive to start doing something? Because mark my word, that's where we're going. The minute you have elected socialists in the state legislature, you have a crony economy, maybe you're not being, collectivized, wearing green fatigues and, carrying AK-47s, but you're ending up in the same predicament via overregulation and excessive taxation by the government. What else do you need to wait for? That's my question. What else do you need to wait for?
Wow. Wow, you're right. The time is long past for people to wait. People need to get organized, get involved, and to start yesterday.
Yeah,
There's no time like the
yesterday.
present.
Mhm.
And we brought up young people a few times here, and I know we're so concerned that there's so many young people attracted to socialism and communism. They believe that the fantasy land of it, the fantasy words that they hear. But what's your message to young people who support socialism, who don't know any better? I mean, what do they need to know?
I know it's going to sound like a Gen X normie, whatever is the names that they call us these days. I really don't pay attention to that anymore. But they do that and they believe that because they're still in that bubble of the colleges and universities in this country, which is, again, it is an arena that has been completely captured by the most radical Marxist line of thoughts in this country. It's kind of like funny sometimes when I explain to people like the whole history of the Cuban Revolution. It's actually like that. For the entire world, the Cuban Revolution always sold the story that it was a revolution of the poor people and looking for equality, this and that. It doesn't take a lot of research online to figure it out that the first supporters of Fidel Castro were the middle class, the entire academia, in Cuban universities and colleges, and people that, which is my warning to college students and all those Democrats, socialists, card carrying in the state, that they went into the whole kumbaya with Fidel Castro at first, and guess what? When the tables turn, communists always eat their own. And they were one of the first ones to end up, in the firing squads or having to be exiles and whatnot. Why? Because they ate up the story of hope and change without doing any type of check and balances. They ate it up completely. And once again, I'll be repeating myself, by the time the Cubans opened their eyes, by the time that I was born in Cuba, the entire country was already gone. It was already gone. And something similar is the path of learning in the school of hard knocks that you're going to see with young Americans that are still in that bubble inside the colleges and the universities and being bombarded and fed up with all this Marxist propaganda embedded in every single aspect of their life and in every single topic of the curriculum of whichever is the career they're trying to complete. So yeah, it's going to be, I don't know, a really rude awakening for them, I guess. And then my communist induced trauma from Cuba always made me think it's like in Cuba, yeah, it is like an island prison. You get the choice of, do a homemade raft with inner boats on a piece of woods and get out of here. But you tell me how far I can get out of Colorado in a homemade raft. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go?
It's a great point. We're at the place to fight right here. We're on the front lines of this. And it's so interesting too. You brought up the middle class kids who kind of buy into this. They go to the colleges, they hear this, and for them maybe the communism and the Che Guevara is cool. It's kind of rebellion against the family, their the parents, which every kid goes through, rebellion against society in a way. And I can't help but really think nowadays we have this proposal being put forward in Colorado for a graduated or a punitive income tax, a progressive type of income tax. And and you see all of the proponents of it, these socialist NGO types on the internet say, no, it's only going to affect the rich people. It's only going to be the really wealthy people. And the middle class kids are like, yeah, it's only the rich people, but they don't realize that middle class is going to be considered the rich people eventually. Sure, they start off with the millionaires, the 500,000, then it's 100,000, then it's 70,000, then it's 50,000. They're all going to be rich, and they're just going to go after them as well. But it's like they just can't see that.
No, they don't. And I sympathize with younger generations. They're in a really, really bad spot. They are starting their careers and their professional life in an economy that is like a total tank disaster. We're like 37 trillion in debt. They don't know whether they're going to be able to pay for their school. When are they going to be able to buy a house? When they are going to be able to start a family? And all this disintegration, along with everything else that it's literally aimed at destroying the core foundation of the family, it's not by coincidence. It is by design. The example that you were saying about the progressive tax legislation in Colorado is just a cherry on the top of that design. And it's one of those examples where now they are defending them from the comfort of their first world life in the classroom of a college or university in Colorado. But by the time they graduate and they get out, they're going to be living in that predicament of the communists eating their own, because at some point, like you said, they're going to be reaching that bracket and they're going to realize that taxation is theft, that the government is redistributing something that they don't produce. And then in some cases is where I reach that conversation where I tell people, you need to vote with your feet. You need to have the courage to put literally your money where your mouth is. For some people, it might be going into a desert island in the Pacific. From others, it might be more doable just finding a place in the next county, in an unincorporated well county, I don't know. Each person needs to find the way to live free in this ever-growing unfree country. And if we don't do it individually, starting with our own steps and develop the courage to do that, then how can we expect that we're going to have a community, a state, or a society that is going to come together to do it and go against the government? We need, I don't know, I know it's going to sound cliche, but it's one of those things where you literally need to lead by example. There is no other way to do it. You need to lead by example. Some people are going to die in that trench. And, some people, you cannot save everybody. You cannot open the eyes of everybody. It's like what I have been doing when we have these conversations. It's like, I don't expect everybody to understand, but if by making myself vulnerable, sharing these testimonies and this experience, I can help to open the eyes of one person, change the mind of one, or at least have someone go into a computer on a phone and do some research and look for more information, it would be worth it. it will be worth it. But at least I have to take that step. I have to have the courage and the initiative to start taking steps to change my reality, because constantly badging about it on social media and in groups and this and that, yes, it is a good mental venting exercise. Yes, it is a good, spreading the reality exercise, but it has to be paired with actionable things that are happening so we can change and we can start turning the tables of the disaster that is Colorado today.
Definitely. It's about action for sure. It's
Mhm.
easy, to identify the problems, to see all the issues that we have, but it's a little bit harder to do something about it, to figure out what to do. And I think you had great points there of people moving into a different county. That's my case. I moved up to Weld County because I wanted the little bit more freedom that Weld County provides, as opposed to I was born and raised in Jefferson County. And I said, after COVID, I got to
Yeah.
get up to Weld County. It's not a choice there. But I think it's so important for individuals to take their own action, to take their own choices, to, do whatever it is, whether it's talking to their neighbors, showing up at a city council meeting, showing up at the state legislature,
Mhm.
maybe even organizing a book club and talking about some important issues and spreading the message and the idea of liberty and that philosophy of freedom to other people. So, we talked about socialism and how wrong it is, how bad it is. And I'm sure everybody watching this video agrees with us. But what's your
Mhm.
message? What's your message for young people and maybe people who are uninformed about capitalism? Because, they get so demonized about capitalism. The teachers are telling them how, like you said, the teachers unions putting out a statement at their conference about how capitalism is the source of all of our problems. And they hear it in their schools, they hear it in the media, they hear it online. What would you say to somebody out there of why capitalism is a good thing?
Well, number one, people that are actually willing, to educate themselves or to unschool themselves for what they have been fed up in, and getting to the real information, is that they need to have the courage to pursue knowledge. You need to have the courage to take those steps. We were talking about the book. I'll get it here for you because most people will see it. These are like tiny little steps on how to be as free as you can in a pretty much 100% unfree society that we have in the United States. But for someone that is looking to pursue that knowledge, to challenge the narrative or the brainwashing that we have been getting in schools and universities nowadays, it requires basic reading. It requires going back to history so we don't repeat the mistakes from the past. And it requires to understand that what we have in states like Colorado is not free market capitalism. We have like a Frankenstein's of socialist, collectivist, central planning over regulation mixed with a lot of cronyism and corruption. That is not the predicament and the tenets of free market capitalism. The minute that, again, you have, the lines of separation of powers in the state are so blurred that you don't even know who is who anymore. The minute that private property and your constitutional rights are like the new brand of charming that we got that month, you need to realize that that is not, at least in a liberal classical concept, that is not free market capitalism, and that is not a free society that is based on constitutionally protected individual rights. And the sooner we understand that, the better and more effective we can become at taking those little steps into being free individuals in a 100% unfree society like the one that we have today.
I love it. It's such valuable information, and I encourage people to read that book. Harry Brown, great author, great libertarian philosopher and speaker during his time, and we need more of them. We need more people like you, Maylene, out there speaking, sharing their stories, and really sounding that alarm and getting people fired up, because I think there's a really the time for it is now. I think more people than ever are interested. But kind of as we wrap up here, what do you want to leave people with? What's the kind of the final message, and how can people follow your work as well?
Well, final message is like, please wake up, get some coffee, get some Red Bull, grow wings, whatever keeps you awake. Do not continue making the mistakes that we have made in Colorado for the last 20 years. We need to turn the tables. There have to be a turning point where it's a grassroots, ground up movement that realizes that this is not a free society, this is not what the market, this is not the proper role of a limited government, and we start taking actionable steps to change that. Number two is keep talking to the younger generations. Keep explaining them the reality of life under government control. Speak out and expose. Vote with your feet. If you need to do that, hey, I voted with my feet 24 years ago when voting with your feet was not even a thing. I have my entire life stuffed in 2 suitcases, and I landed in the United States with $200 in my pocket. So trust me, if I was able to survive that and keep going, you can do your little part in your first work in Colorado, and start doing something to change. Like you said, it doesn't have to be running for office. Some people are gifted to do that. I have a very big aversion to politicians, so I would never recommend that. Some people would be a mom's group, a grandparents group, a book club, an interview with a podcaster every week. Each of us has a gift, has an ability, has the potential to do something productive to change, like this garbage, corrupt reality that we have in the state today. It only takes that courage to take the first step. So that's my kind of like call to action to it. And then like I don't know what else, like the last shameless plug-in, especially in this space of the libertarian, conservatarian audience that we may have, it's to follow me on social media and keep the updates on a very, very amazing event that is coming next month. Is the Free Cities Foundation is hosting their annual conference in Prague. The topic this year is going to be voting with your feet. I was very humbled by being invited to be one of the speakers to talk about my experience living Cuba. But I think it's going to be an eye-opening experience for a lot of people. I know not everybody can attend in person. At some point, they're going to be having information online for virtual sessions and videos and whatnot. It's a freecitiesconference.com. You can follow me on social media too. Mostly all my political rants are going to be on X too. Or just look up. I have a very weird last name, guys. Anybody can type it and you're going to find me. So that's kind of like the easiest handle to give out. And I guess that the turning or the final point is like, do not lose the hope. Yes, it's going to be hard to get the state back. Yes, it's going to take a lot of work, but we have to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere. And the sooner that we do it, the better results we can get.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. I appreciate all your work and encourage people to follow you on X and definitely keep up to date with all your interviews and speeches that you give because it's phenomenal.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. I hope that I can join you guys in person in one of the upcoming events if it's not too crazy with my schedule. But yes, I really appreciate the time and the invitation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Mailyn. Hope to talk to you again sometime and take care.
Sounds good. Thank